Hello again, this is Charlie Belfontaine, and you're listening to the Chicago Housing Experts. I'm just thrilled to be in the room again with Patrick.
I help people buy, sell, invest, basically give them knowledge to make the best decisions for them, whatever their situation may be. My number is 312-513-6314. You can find me on Instagram at I'm Steve Davis and Facebook.
And Patrick?
Good morning. I'm Patrick Loftus. I'm back from a vacation that I was really sad to come back from, to be honest.
You went warm and you come back cold. I don't blame you.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't show you guys any of the pictures or videos.
You keep those things private, please.
Yeah, I'm not interested to see your nude beach videos.
Whatever you do on your vacation, Charlie, that's your, you should keep that to yourself, as a matter of fact. We're a very wholesome family,
We are.
my wife and I.
Sure.
Not you. You're a,
I heard your stories this morning.
Yeah. Talk about most of that on
No.
public airways.
Nor are we going to.
We should not. Anyways, let's get serious ideas, and I take
Serious
myself
issues.
extremely seriously. Seriously, though, I'm Loftus_law. I'm a real estate lawyer. So when buyer does not go buck wild after getting that inspection report. Charlie?
Yeah, and my name is Charlie Belfontaine. I own Chicagoland Home Inspectors. Today, though, we're gonna talk more about some condo nightmares. So as we were preparing for this show, there's a whole bunch of people that are getting to the point where they choose a property, put an agreement on a property, and then things are just going haywire and the deal's getting canceled. So we're going to chat about some nightmares when buying a condo. And then somebody else was asking about how stable is the housing market going to be in 2025. So we're going to go to there first. But Patrick, if you don't mind, I know you got a couple of horror stories.
How stable is the housing market?
No, I want to go with the condo stuff.
Ask me tomorrow. And then the following day, and I'll have different answers entirely. Condo, just a brief overview. A condo, it's like an apartment building, but you own your space, okay? What that means for you financially is that you're a shareholder, right? It means that all of the expenses of the condominium you're sharing with your neighbors. And so not only do you pick up your part of the tab for the snow removal, the landscaping, any of the other fun stuff
Elevator,
like
pools,
door people, all
yeah.
that stuff. It's, I think it sort of goes understated how that all works, right? So what that means is that when stuff comes up, whether it be capital improvements or anything extraordinary that might come up, God forbid, some wind blow your roof off or something, that's you and your neighbors that have to foot the bill. There's no condo daddy in the sky that you go ask for that money from. So it's much different than an apartment in that way. Now, I'll take you back to 2022. There was a famous incident of a building in Surfside, Florida,
yeah.
that collapsed,
Yeah.
and it was a very sad event. A lot of people lost their lives, and let's not lose focus of that aspect of it, because we're going to get into all the financials, and I think that all of that is really secondary to the tragedy of the thing that actually happened. But following that, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which not to get too deep into the details with that, but they really make a lot of the rules when it comes to mortgage lending, and it has to do with where those loans go after the loans are made, and their rules are really important.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that. Once they saw that happened, they started to take a much closer look at, so what's going on with this thing? Because ultimately, that condo is used as collateral in case the loan is not repaid. That's kind of how mortgages work. That's really what they're meant to do. And if that collateral falls down and washes into the ocean, That's not good for the lender. Lenders will be much less inclined to lend money to buy condos. And so they started to take a closer look, and they've tightened up the rules considerably as far as what passes their standard in order to say, yes, this can be used as collateral to make loans that we approve of, otherwise called conventional loans. What's that doing in the current condo market? It's making condos really hard to buy and sell. And a lot of it has to do with deferred maintenance. When you're a condo owner and when you're on a the condo board just consists of your neighbors, your other condo owners. And when expenses come up, they're not any more inclined to spend more on those expenses than you are. So if work really should be done, let's say you need to, you got a parking garage and you need to redo the membrane on the parking deck. But maybe it could last a couple more years. You kind of look at your life situation and you go, I'm probably selling next year. And you go, vote down on the membrane, let it be someone else's problem. And then hot potato passes and you just hope you're not left with it, right? A lot of people who own condos right now are finding themselves in possession of a hot potato and the music has stopped. But where that intersects with the market is that buyers, obviously, they're not already on the hook for it, and they don't want to be on the hook for it going forward. But also, they understand when you're buying existing real estate that you're also buying its problems as well. So even if they take a look at all of it and they go, okay, yeah, there's some issues, but it's to be expected, and I'm willing to move forward, they're still running into situations where their lender is like, but we're not. And so you need some alternatives. And it's unfortunate that we wouldn't have Joey with us because I'm sure he's dealing with this even more frequently and more intimately than I am. Any kind of unfinished work is really putting a wrench into any of my condo transactions. And it's both on the buyer and seller side.
See, and that just doesn't make sense to me. If somebody's making repairs and they're doing work to the property, that's a good thing. You know, I could see it if there's no money to spend to do that and we have to start doing a whole bunch of special assessments with it. But I actually want to see work done to these buildings, but you're telling me the mortgage companies are just the opposite.
They want to see that it's done.
Finished.
They don't necessarily, it's not enough that you say, well, it's in progress or a special assessment is under consideration. Because often this work is also involves a special assessment, right? And you know, in the handful of instances I have going on right now, each one of them is involving a special assessment.
Give us one that's going on.
Oh gosh, so for example, one client was supposed to close on a purchase of a condo, and this one's a fun one. Not in the way that we classically think of fun, but it's an unusual scenario, or well, it's becoming more.
It's fun like your Canadian fun. Like it's kind of awkward, you know, but I get it. That's my coder from Canada, and I love my Canadian friends. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be insulting.
Yeah,
but he does that to me all the time.
Politically speaking, I would be careful. I think that
I'm Canadian.
Right.
Then it's okay, right?
I'm steering off that highway onto the off ramp and somewhere else.
All right, get back onto the condo. Sorry about that.
So, long story short, my long story is never short. The association needed to remove some asbestos from one of the common some part of the common area, and they had a contractor doing the work. And there's a neighbor in the 6-unit building who they've got a pretty long-standing beef with the association, and so every opportunity they have to stick it to them, they like to, which. Again, it goes to sort of the lack of understanding that a lot of people have. If you rat your association out to the city, you're really essentially ratting yourself out because you are a member of that association. This particular person is a 16% owner of that corporation, right? And so you're calling the cops on your own self because 16% of whatever the result is going to be you. So well done on taking the gun and pointing it at your foot and pulling the trigger. But where that affects my client is that now so the city comes out and they stop work immediately, and they've got to test and they've got to do this other stuff, and the lender finds out, and the lender is like, well, we cannot make a loan for this unit in this building until that work is done, and all of that. And fortunately, the good part of the story is that the association they are being diligent in getting that work done, but it's not the timing isn't quick enough because my client needs to move in. His lease ends next week, and if we don't close, so he's got to close before that work's done. So he's going to end up going with a non-conventional loan, non-conforming loan, and it's going to cost more in terms of a interest rate, and we're lucky that there is even a solution to this problem, albeit one that is costing him more than he would have liked to spend on it. But
I don't think that's the real problem, though. From what I'm hearing from you, the real problem is the lady or man. I don't know if it was a man or a woman.
That you assumed that it was a lady.
It was a slip of tongue. I didn't know that.
It's
I don't know.
Dude.
But it's like, you got a bad neighbor. You got somebody who's just looking to make waves, and quite frankly, that I think is the real problem.
That is certainly something that I took into consideration, and essentially the same sentence came out of my mouth where I'm just like, most of this is a temporary problem, except that our guy across the hall is a continuing problem because there were 3 different lawsuits that all just got wrapped up recently with him.
Boy.
And he's got more time than sense, time and money than sense. So he's not done yet, but they're also looking to push him out, and associations they've got ways to do that.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of influence and power, just like any other shareholder or corporation where you've got one shareholder that's a problem. You can definitely use the provisions in the bylaws to do things.
And I get all that. And Steve, I don't know if you have any examples
I'm itching
of this
over
stuff
here.
as
Yes.
well. All right. I'm going to say quick.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I don't know if you could build this into it, if there's any difference between like a 6 or a 3 unit building as opposed to a 150 unit building. I know law of averages, you're going to have more bad people, but go on. Hit me with what you're itching about.
So I'm not.
What are you itching about,
I'm not.
Steve?
Tell me what itches.
Don't get too personal.
Yeah, I don't want to. It's another story for another day. So no, as far as the 3 to 6 to whatever unit building, that's more Patrick's explanation there. I do not know as much about it. I can find out, or I can ask someone such as him. But anyway, so I have a 3-syllable word. Yeah, preemption. Okay, and that means that there are certain steps you can take as a seller's agent, or even as a buyer's agent, but more of a seller agent, where you can have that conversation with your potential seller. Listen, you live in this condo, are you putting 10% into reserves every year? No, we're not. Well, that's a problem. That's unwarrantable. That causes problems. That means you need 20% or more money down. 20% or more, I believe, is the actual fact there. The more money you put down, the easier it is for the bank to say, okay, we'll go ahead and take that chance.
The less risk.
Thank you. The less risk. So, that being said, having those conversations, preemptive conversations with your clients is huge. You need to understand what you're getting yourself into. You need to be able to educate your clients. If you don't have the answers or you're concerned with it, find out. Don't just wing it. The thing is that I have found that when it comes to condos, when it's hard to sell them, it's because you haven't done your job. I had a situation recently where I had a client that had a property sold it, but it was tricky. And it was what Patrick had just mentioned, which is the fact that there was work to be done. It was actually a special assessment. It was being taken care of. We found out that there was a lis pendens against the building. Mm-hmm. We found out that there were issues with work that had to be done. And, all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, the condo association didn't even tell the owners. which obviously is a very big problem. And it makes my job harder because I didn't know it either. So then you have these conversations with perhaps the buyer's agent and the buyer's attorney, and now we have a problem. So the preemption aspect is very, very, very key. Now, as Patrick was saying, though, is that you don't always have control over it. And guess what? People lie. So as Patrick was saying, like, oh, we're going to have to put a new membrane on the roof. I believe you said.
Parking garage.
Thank you. Parking garage. Roof of the parking garage?
No, like Charlie, don't you have to like put on the deck of the parking garages, and it's not just a slab of concrete. There's like
Isn't the deck at the top of the roof?
no the deck of a parking deck, right? So like
Yeah.
each floor of a parking garage
Oh,
isn't
right.
just bare concrete. You've got other things.
I honestly am not aware of it. You know, I think it is, you know,
Never heard that
plain
from Charlie.
concrete. No,
That's weird.
I'm not aware of it.
That is kind of bizarre.
Every parking deck I know is usually, you know, pre-stressed concrete where they put on there, and it's the steel that holds everything together. But I'm not aware of any, you know, coating unless they want to do some sort of waterproofing or something like that.
Come
on
back
there.
next week to find out after I research the idea of how exactly is a parking deck constructed.
Yeah.
So-
Is there a
But that would
membrane?
be more of a liquid, not
So-
a.
Is there a membrane? Stay
So,
tuned.
so the deal is that when this was the Liz Pendens was going on, it was just saying that they had to do a bunch of work. The issue with that is, you know, at this time we were right in the middle of winter. We're getting out of winter, but at the same time, you can't do work where it has to be warm out, such as concrete settling, so on. It has to cure. It can't cure if it's too cold, so on. So then, as you know, we know these things have to be done, and the lender is like, well, we didn't do the work, so we can't close. Well, we can't do the work till September, but it is getting done in September. So you had to go through a lot of red tape and so on. So when we talk about Surfside, when we talk about anything to be warrantable, or the fact of being able to get through underwriting, or the bank to even take that chance, take the risk, as you mentioned, the fact is that if you preempt a lot of it, a lot of those things can be answered. Now, there still are, as I mentioned before, certain situations where, you know, the client may lie, or the fact that maybe it's just the wrong information, or we didn't even know about it in the first place, which is very unique, because normally, and what I mean by unique is the fact that you're supposed to be delivering that information to the owners of a condo building. So, you know, there's a lot that goes into it lately.
Yeah, I like the idea of preemption, because really what you want to do, if the strategy is I want to sell this property, you're kind of stuck with what is going on with the association. Steve mentioned a Liz Pendens. A Liz Pendens is a document that gets recorded that is basically a notice to the world that there is litigation involving the property. As soon as you've got litigation involving a condo association, you need to start doing some research about what kind of litigation is it? Is it some kind of slip and fall? Is it something else? Or is it a lawsuit against the board for some kind of malfeasance in running the association? Those are two very different kinds of lawsuits. The first one, as long as we've got insurance coverage, we're probably good. We're probably not worried. The second one, we're a lot more worried about that one.
When you're saying we, who is we? I'm sorry.
Well, anyone who is trying to transact in that building.
Gotcha.
So if I'm a seller and I go and I look and I see, oh, geez, there's litigation involving my building, and I do a little digging, I find out, someone slipped and broke their ankle, and our insurance has picked it up. I'm done. I'm done with my due diligence. I can now preempt that with a potential buyer and say, hey, just so you know, there is litigation involving this building, but I also want you to know that we researched it, and we know that it is a personal injury case and that there's insurance coverage for it. You've now ticked that box. You have solved that problem before it even came up, and no one's really even going to think any more about it. Whereas if you just go, well, I hope everything's okay, and you go and you order those condo docs and it reveals litigation, now more questions are going to get asked, and there's going to be more skepticism on the part of the buyer. And that's not good for buyer or seller, because for the seller, obviously, if the buyer's going like, hold up, they didn't, why wasn't this brought up to me earlier? that puts them on the defense, which is not a good thing. As a
And
seller,
that was the case. That was the case that happened because of the fact that they weren't, the sellers weren't told, and neither, obviously, I wasn't, because the sellers didn't know about it.
Yeah. So, and as the seller, I'm going, geez, if had I known about this previously, I could have been better prepared. And so it really goes to having the knowledge to know what to look for at the end of the day. I mean, it's pretty easy to go find a Liz Pendens. If I was gonna, even if I was gonna sell my own property, I mean, I know we've had lawsuits in my building where I wasn't aware of it until I found out about it offhand. We have a really kind of, it's a very condo workout room on the top floor, right? It's got a handful of machines and some treadmills, and it's really not worth thinking about too much. I've been up there a handful of times in the 15 years I've lived there, but the unit owner below, they didn't like how they could hear the weights being dropped if someone didn't gently place them down ever so gingerly. Second time I've used that word today. So what did they do? They sued the association about the noise. I don't know what they were intending to get out of them, but they did eventually settle the lawsuit, and they had to put some kind of additional flooring underneath the already padded floors. And it's like, I don't know. From my perspective, I'm like, hey, you knew or should have known that directly above you is, it'd be the same thing. I hear my neighbor above me, when they're walking in high heels, or you know what I do hear? I hear their dog playing with a toy. I can hear like the thing rolling around on the hardwood. Now, what am I going to do? Am I going to sue my upstairs neighbor and be like, your dog is a little bit too rambunctious. I need you to have a calmer dog. Can you maybe feed the dog some Xanax? Or no, obviously not. I'm just going to be like, I live in a condo. I've also had conversations with people who think I'm the I'm
the authority having jurisdiction.
That my opinion is the wrong one. So apparently, inquiring minds can disagree on that one. But at the end, I mean, it could be something as simple as that, where all of a sudden transactions in your building are going to be in question, whether they can even proceed, and that's really bad for property values.
It's funny you mentioned those. The walking and everything else. My short stint in condo life, I remember somebody was complaining that they're hearing other people flushing toilets and hearing the water going down the pipes.
Yeah, I could hear my neighbor showering.
Somebody else complained because they live over the garage door. So when people come in, the door, underground parking, when the door opens and closes every time, they're right above it.
It's called buyer beware.
If you live in a house, by the way, and that house has a garage door, you're probably going to hear your own
You
garage door.
might hear the garage door.
And you know who that really sucks for? Your teenage kids, because as soon as they're trying to get back in the house after they're out past curfew, you can hear it.
People want to know, why'd you leave all your floors squeaky when you remodeled the house? No sneaky. No sneaky.
Daddy Charlie, he's got all the tricks.
All the little tricks, absolutely.
My favorite trick of yours is putting a urinal in the garage.
Yes, that is a good
awesome
trick. I do like that
But
one.
you did. By the way, last week I made a comment in the Facebook comments, because I wasn't here last week, about that. And I could see you
ignored.
I could see the look on your face going,
no,
I ain't adjusting that.
Nope. But I don't have a urinal in my garage.
Shameful behavior. Well, that's what you
Why
said.
do you keep denying? Why do you keep denying
not there.
the fantastic urinal in the garage?
Unbelievable.
I want to know more about condo decks. Let's change the subject here. One of the things that I keep talking when I do our Zoom calls with our clients buying condos is the importance of getting those documents and that, and especially the minutes. And a lot of it has to do with what you're saying. Whoa! I got a little smile and a wink from you.
Minutes are good. Minutes are really good.
Crucial.
They give you so much information that they really can't be lawyered out, right? So often you'll get the 22.1 disclosure, which is the statutorily required disclosure that an association has to give to a buyer. And I can't tell you how many times that some lawyer has been over it umpteen times to basically in so many words say absolutely nothing, so that neither the board nor the management company nor themselves could ever be accused of withholding information, but also no one would ever accuse them of presenting any useful information. But the meeting minutes are not prepared by a lawyer. They're prepared by a layperson who was just there at the meeting, and they happen to be the secretary of the association, and they give you all kinds of valuable information. A lot of what I told you in that story about my client who was buying the unit in the building that was removing asbestos, I mean, the majority of the juicy information came from reviewing the meeting minutes where, you know, they referenced litigation, which I was not previously aware of. The disclosure said nothing about litigation because litigation was over. So I then knew to inquire more about the litigation, which is where I found out there were 3 different lawsuits that ultimately got settled. We also found out that there had been mold discovered in the storage unit that is connected with, not connected physically, but connected with
Part of the property.
Yeah, it's my client's future storage unit in the basement has mold there, and they had yet to do the remediation work, and so we're working out an escrow on that. But like, if you don't look at that stuff carefully, and I should disclaim by saying I don't read that stuff line by line. It's hundreds of pages, and it's beyond my remit, and you'll find that in all of my engagement documentation. So as a buyer, you need to sit down with your favorite drink, whether it's, you know, alcoholic or not, and, you know, spend an evening and go through it and develop a set of questions to ask your lawyer. No matter how carefully it looks like they've been over it, you will look at it through a different lens than your lawyer will. And you will come up with questions that would probably not come to your lawyer's mind because your lawyer's seen however many hundreds of sets of documents. So important. Don't sit there and just be like, hey, I hired other people to do this. This is not This is not that situation. You've got to be your own advocate.
We always do, and that's for all of us. That's for the mortgage, the home inspector, the real estate broker. I'm sorry, but the more that the home buyer or seller knows, the more power that they're going to have.
Ask all the stupid questions.
Absolutely.
I'm happy to answer stupid questions. I mean, I'll probably make fun of you on the podcast if you ask me a
There's
real
no
stupid
stupid question when it comes to buying a house. It's one of the most important decisions you're going to make in your life. So ask as many questions as you need.
Action if you don't ask. If you
I
just
agree
go
with that.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean I can't make fun of them later.
No, you absolutely can. We just won't mention.
But I think it's a really important thing you brought up, which is the fact of a lot of people. Even some of my clients will say to me like, oh, this is a stupid question, or, oh, I don't want to bother you with all these questions. And I go, ask away, because the fact is you need the answers. And a good agent is going to sit there and weed through, help you understand the answers to all your questions. And if they can't answer those questions, they don't just wing it. They say, listen, that's a great question. Let me find out and I'll get back to you. This is one of the most important things that you do in your life and make the investment you make in your life. You have questions, we have answers. That is why we are here anyway. But more importantly, like, is that for people that are listening that are first-time home buyers or just have questions like,
or first-time home sellers.
Don't feel like you're bothering someone by asking those questions. You need to ask those questions. Google can only tell you so much, right?
Yeah.
So
I think
pure experience.
That information can be quite local. And Google, I mean, you know, Google, ChatGPT, wherever you're going with it, it's not there yet as far as being able to say, okay, in this particular part of the Chicago area, this is how things are done, or, you know, based on. It's just not there yet. Someday, maybe. Someday I'll be replaced and I'll have to go find something else to do. Maybe. I don't know. You know, people have been thinking that since forever, that, you know, the next bit of technology is going to replace all of us, and somehow we still have work to do. Just more of it, I guess. But yeah, it's look, all 3 of us in this room make the same amount of money if you ask 0 questions or you ask 100 questions. So get good value out of it.
Good point. No, that's awesome. I mean, you're right. Get your money's worth. and get as much value as you can out of the individuals that you work with. And that's one of the reasons we set up that ChicagoHousingExperts.com website.
Better than ChatGPT.
Well, you're getting a human being that you could talk with, absolutely. And there's people that have proven themselves, through years of experience that we're going to use as our experts on there. And they're willing to help you, and it's free. All right, so why not get in there? We're starting to put more and more classes up there. Learn about lead pipes, learn about, duct cleaning, learn about lead paint and what are your risks and your rewards and the radon. Learn about the condo docs. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there. And if it's not addressed yet, ask. And in fact, I want to ask, how does somebody get the minutes? Is that open, like Freedom of Information or something?
No. That's
all depends.
I mean, it's certainly not freedom of information. Like not any old person can go and request. Just like I can't go and get the same kind of documentation. Let's say I'm a Walmart shareholder. I have certain rights to certain documentation. I have the right to attend the annual meetings and vote for the board members and so on and so forth. If I'm not, I'm not entitled to that. I'm only entitled to what is reported publicly. Condo associations are not publicly traded companies. They're not obligated to provide any public information. You can get like condo declarations, which gives you some information. If you're looking, there's rental restrictions or to a certain extent pet restrictions. That's a good place to start if you're just trying to get kind of the bare minimum of information. But
I just want to answer it real quick. I've heard the term condo docs, and then you just used the term declarations. Is that the same thing or are they different?
A condo declaration is one of the condominium governing documents, right? So, and I'm using jargon in a particular way, and I know that my precision in using those terms is just because I'm a lawyer and a real estate lawyer at that. A condo declaration is a document that gets recorded at the county, and it is the thing that establishes that building as a condominium. It divides up all of those individual units.
Like corporate papers? No?
This doesn't really have a corollary as far as in the corporate world, because you're also going to have bylaws you'll have bylaws in a corporation, but the condo declaration is essentially the Constitution as it pertains to your building. So it gives you basically the bedrock rules, regulations. What is your relationship with your neighbor? What is the process for establishing the regular monthly assessment, special assessments, all of the kind of the rules of the road as it pertains to how we're going to operate this thing. How's this thing established? Where does your unit begin and end? How much of the building is yours in terms of a percentage, et cetera. And then everything else builds off the top of that. So you've got bylaws, which is basically the rules for how the board operates itself. And then, that's laid on top of the rules of the road in the condo deck.
So it's interesting you bring that up because I have a question for you.
Sure.
So you have a 6-unit building, the 2 units on top. So, 3R or 3W, 3S, let's say, right?
Oh, W and an S. Interesting. Okay.
Well, south and north, west, south.
Yeah.
No,
I'm with you.
South and west.
So it'd be east and west,
north,
wouldn't it? Yeah, that's completely my fault. All right, thank you for.
No, that's all right. We're here to embarrass you.
That one hurt. All right.
I have no.
I've only had a year of
life.
experience in real estate, so just give me a break here.
I have no higher function in life than to point out every little mistake people make.
And he's good.
That's so true. So that being said, the east-west aspect. So there's 6 units in the building. East and west have the rooftop decks. They're individualized, but at the same time, that person's in 3S, that person's in
3W.
3. Well,
It doesn't matter.
3 East. And this one.
We get it.
Anyway, so the question is the rules and regs. That one in particular, they would share the whole roof, correct? Even if it's partitioned.
So that's what is going to be part of what should be in a condo declaration. All right. So roof rights. If you have roof rights that are specific to your unit, typically, and I'm speaking broadly, generally, your situation may be different. Okay, just using that as a blanket disclaimer. But typically, what I would see is roof rights reserved for that top unit owner as a limited common element. So it'll be part of the common elements that everyone owns. But as a limited common element, it is reserved for the use of one or more, but not all of the unit owners. Usually it's going to be one unit owner. And what you can do is you can look at the condo plat, which is an attachment to the condo declaration, and you can see the dimensions of exactly where it is. And each building is going to be a little bit different. And this is part of the types of things that I'm making sure of. If someone says, hey, there's roof rights, we need to establish what those are. I want to get the condo plat because I want to see where those roof rights begin and end. Is there a roof up there already? What about when the roof needs to be replaced? What do we do with the roof with the deck that's on top? Usually it's going to mean that as the owner of the roof rights, you've got to pay to have that deck disassembled. They do the work on the roof and you pay to have it put back up there if that's what you choose. But that's part of what you are undertaking if you get roof rights in most instances.
And when you say roof rights, that means that roof deck is just mine. The other unit people can't use it.
As part of my ownership of the dwelling unit, I have the exclusive right to use that area of the roof. I had one a few years ago where, it's typical that people don't know as much as I do about this stuff. And so they'll describe things in the way that they believe it to be. And then it's up to me and everyone else in the transaction to discern, all right, so what is it really? Because so often it's not exactly what they thought it was and what they told us. So they express that there's roof rights and so, all right, show me the condo plat. And as it turned out, it was a portion of the roof was reserved as a limited common element for that unit, with another portion reserved as just regular common area for everyone to use, which they had thought they were the only ones with rights to the roof. And I don't recall what their exact plans were, but if they were to construct a roof deck on that entire roof, they only have the exclusive right to that area that is reserved for that. And that I do remember that being an issue for the client, 'cause it's like, I thought I had, let's say, 300 square feet of space to build a roof deck, and it turned out they only had 100 square foot, and that is going to make a big difference depending on what your plans are. So the condo declaration, that's going to be a recorded document. It's publicly accessible. So yeah, to that extent, you can get those before you're involved in a transaction.
Sure.
If the rest of them, whether it be rules and regulations, which are things that are, again, an overlay that are established by the board at some point, those are going to be, you have to get those from a seller, and whether or not they have them will be up to whether or not the seller decided to get those, or if they're going to wait until the property is under contract. Likewise with meeting minutes, budgets, financials, anything else that's available, you're more likely than not, it's going to be a couple weeks into the transaction before you get to see those, and that's when a lot of that stuff comes up.
So some of this stuff confuses me a little bit, and Steve, maybe you can educate me somewhat on it. I know that when people or real estate agents go ahead and list a property for sale, they're going to put the dimensions of all the bedrooms and bathrooms, or, and the square footage of everything. They try to get as much detail as they can. I get it. There's always a disclaimer. These are estimates just in case I'm off by something. But wouldn't they have to write out that roof deck on there as well? Shouldn't that be something that's accurate? And is there any recourse?
Well, so here's the thing with that is, first of all, when you're listing a property and that seller, you ask questions such as, how old is this? How old is this? When did this done? Was this recently fixed? Blah, blah, blah. All these things. You go off what they say to you, and you can only go off from what you believe to be the actual, truth behind it. But it's not always accurate. And I ran into a situation recently where they said that something was, 10 years old and it ended up being 20. And I was like, oh, geez. And it's like, you're not doing it on purpose. You're not disclosing, false information, but it can be construed that way. And
absolutely. I mean, I got a big mansion in Highland Park right now that the tax records don't show the basement as part of the square footage of the property, and
Which
that
it
takes
wouldn't.
it from what's that?
It wouldn't.
It wouldn't.
I wouldn't think
It's
it
below
is,
grade.
but they listed including the basement. It's not a walkout
It's
basement.
not good.
And the real estate agent included it. So you look at the tax records and it says that it's 10,000 square feet, and then you look at the real estate listing and it says that it's 18,000 square feet.
Yeah, the thing is when it comes to that is it's one of the main reasons why I don't put square footage unless it's actually done through something where I have evidence. So for one of the things that I do is I do floor plans. So I pay for floor plans to be
I
done.
like that.
And the fact is they say it's 1,850 square feet. Then I will say 1,850 square feet estimated. Because then if someone comes back to me and says, hey, listen, this is only 1,600 square feet, and they asked, and you said it was 1,850, I can say, you know what, you're absolutely right based on what you're talking about. But at the same time, like I had this done and this is what I got. Now, Patrick, you can go into this more, the legality aspect to it. But that's also another reason why I don't always put it on there. I may just leave it alone. And when it comes to a basement, such as this Highland Park situation, you can say it's 18,000 square feet of living space approximately. However, break it down in your agent remarks so that people can see what it is. Now, I don't know if there's legality behind this or not, or if there's a right or wrong answer there, but I will tell the agents. They're like, oh, well, it says it's only 963 square feet. I'd be like, well, that's above grade, but below grade, we have another 1,000. Now, that's below grade, though, so I can't put that into the remark, or I can't put that into the information. How does that work?
Yeah, so there's some gray area here, and I think what a lot of agents are trying to do is they're trying to imagine what their prospective buyers' search criteria would be. Mm-hmm. And so if you've got 900 square foot of above grade square footage with an equal amount below grade, what you don't want is for you not to show up in people's search results when they're saying, don't show me anything less than 1,000 square foot or 1,500 square foot. And so, they're doing what they think is in their client's best interest. Now, you could run yourself into a problem later on when someone looks at an appraisal and they go, why is this appraisal only saying 950? I thought you listed it as 1,800. And you go, well, I did. I mean, you see that there's a finished basement. And you go, well, you lied to me. And it's like, okay, so presuming
and that's a big
that
deal, feeling deceived.
Again, if it's in writing, though,
let me finish. Okay, so a lie.
You're getting us all worked up.
Yeah.
Be careful. You gotta be careful accusing someone of lying, right?
Yeah.
A lie is an intentional misstatement of fact, right? And the intent is to mislead somebody, right? And if you take it a couple steps further, then now you're in fraud. Now, one of the important aspects of proving that someone lied to you and that you should be entitled to recover something is that you were damaged in some way. And part of that proof is to say that your reliance on that misstatement was reasonable. Now, if I go out to a 900 square foot home above grade and it's listed at 1,800 because there's an equal amount below grade, how reasonable is my reliance on that listing now that I've been out and seen the characteristics of the property? Not that reasonable anymore. And so you will see that the case law kind of tracks in that way. So if you're looking for a bright line rule to follow, I think what Steve articulated earlier is probably a good best practice to follow, which is, do what you need to do to fall into the search results of the people who well and truly should be considering the home, but further clarify that, hey, of this number, understand that, because you get, I don't know how many characters you get in the description, but you get a fair amount of space to write all sorts of, flowery language, like it's cozy and bright and all the things that you say when a place is small. I think you would include there that, hey,
quaint is a good one too.
Yeah, get your thesaurus out and have at it.
What about another potential problem here? I'm going back many years, so I'm not going to be 100% clear on this, right? But I remember when I was living out in the Plainfield area, I felt our taxes were really high, and I was trying to dispute them. And I ended up calling the assessor, who was an elected official. I'm sure that's everywhere, but at least out there it was. And as he was going, he goes, I watch all the real estate transactions. I see what the houses go for. I change all the values, based on what the houses are recently being sold with. All right. And this is Will County, out there. And that's my fear is that just stuck in my brain. And is that something that's going to affect somebody's property taxes? Anything could. I get it.
Probably
but,
not.
Yeah.
In the example you're using, all of those homes are typically going to be subdivision homes, and there's going to be 6 or 7 models that plans were submitted when they went to be built. All of the pertinent information that goes into the assessor's database was filled in then. Do they update it from time to time if someone finishes their basement or something like that? My understanding and belief is that if, say, for example, you pull a permit to finish your basement, that might be taken into consideration by the assessor's office, and you might get an increase in your assessment for that. A lot of people don't want to pull permits because of that. They want to fly below the radar, and they go, "Hey, I'm working in my basement. Who's ever going to find it?" My official stance on that, by the way, as a licensed attorney, is you should be following all the rules. And if you don't blame me. That's on you. But some people do that. So yeah, I mean, in a platted subdivision that was built in the last 40 years, there's not going to be a lot to dispute, because you're going to look around there, you're going to see effectively 30, 40, 50, 100 neighbors with almost the same house, give or take different colors and whatnot. And when you go to argue that your assessment should be lower, the assessor is going to say, what about your 99 other neighbors with exactly the same square footage, who have more or less within 1,000 square foot, the same size lot, and we account for that, and so on and so forth. You have a lot more to argue when you're talking about more unique properties. If you've got my dad and stepmom had a 10-acre place out in McHenry, and it had a pole barn for the horses and all that stuff. I got all sorts of arguments to make there, because pull me all the 10-acre properties in McHenry Township and let's find the ones with the 3 lowest assessments, and I'll go in there and fight the assessor all day long. But I'm not going to get very far with a platted subdivision where there's so many similar homes that have similar assessments.
But I have seen it. I have seen there's after the 2008, so this was around 12, 13 or whatever, and the house prices were still depressed out there. They didn't bounce back yet in that area. They ended up appealing the taxes. The houses, or the one house that I remember, was valued and appraised, or I should say valued by the assessor's office at $430, and these people ended up paying $260 for the house because they got a good deal on it because it was depressed buying time at that point. And I guess that's now the value of the house, is whatever people are willing to pay for it. So they were able to show the receipts on that, and they literally got their taxes cut in half. And I'm happy for them.
You can, for me, the better approach would be for the association to employ a law firm to appeal for everybody.
I didn't know you could do that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Most associations, I think, if they're not doing it and they're not being advised to do so, I mean, if you're self-managed, you probably don't necessarily have anyone giving you that advice. But if you have a management company and they're not bringing that to your attention as an option for the board to consider, I would be thinking real hard about why I am employing that management company, what I'm paying them for.
Now, you're talking about houses or condos or both?
Yes.
Be both.
Associations can appeal for their membership, and it makes sense to do so, because you will often, at least at the assessor level, run into the argument that even if you have recent sales that suggest that the assessed valuation should be less, that you'll run into the argument that it's where it's at is still equitable, and it's they are legally allowed to rely on that, and so then you will have to try to go to the next level, which is the PTAB, Property Tax Appeal Board, and on up. From there you can go to the circuit court and so on and so forth. You start to get into some real diminishing returns unless you've got a really valuable property that you're trying to get a really big reduction in the assessment on. But there's lots of ways to do it, but yeah, I mean, if you're trying to avoid the, hey, you shouldn't get better, you shouldn't get a better shake than your neighbors who are in the same situation. Get together with your neighbors and everyone file an appeal.
I know we're running short on time right now, but if you could tell me, what's the difference between a co-op and a condo?
Man.
Is it one of those long answers?
No, I mean, I'll give you the quickest answer I can.
Please.
So co-op is basically it's basically how they made apartment buildings into a situation where individuals could own parts of the building before condo was a thing. Condos didn't come into play until the 60s. And so if a building is a building with multi-units that are owned by individuals, really you legitimately do own stock in a corporation in a co-op, and then that stock gives you the right to what's called a proprietary lease. So you are leasing from the corporation, but by virtue of ownership of that particular stock, it gives you the exclusive right to lease that unit. So it was kind of a workaround before we had this concept of condo. With condo, you're basically saying, building this building, we're dividing it into this particular set of units by virtue of recording this document, and we have a whole statute that governs how that's supposed to work. So
I do notice that I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing is that when it comes to co-ops too, I find that their assessments are a lot higher because it includes a lot of things, and
the taxes too,
and
right?
the taxes, and more importantly, is they're harder to sell.
They are, because people don't really want to buy stock. They want to buy real estate.
Right, it's the same thing.
And they're so, unless you're like in New York City, where co-ops are pretty commonplace. I mean, the one advantage, and I'm using air quotes here just because this is a audio medium. Some would find it an advantage that a co-op is really the only legally recognized form of home ownership where you can legit discriminate against people. And that's kind of why they like it in New York, because if you live in an exclusive building and you don't want
let's say, call them riffraff.
If you don't want some person who's going to attract a lot of paparazzi, for example, you can just be like, yeah, they don't qualify to live in this building. So you can legit say no. Condo, you can't do that.
Right.
That's interesting. Well, we are running out of time. Steve, if you don't mind, give us your contact information again, please.
Sure. Steve Davis, Kamar Group, Real Brokerage. I help sell, buy, invest. My number is 312-513-6314. You can find me on Instagram at I'm Steve Davis, and hit that follow button. Always like new subscribers, and I love answering questions that have to do with real estate.
Patrick Loftus, real estate lawyer. Find me on Instagram, Loftus_law, and TikTok, Loftus Law. Find my shorts on YouTube, Loftus Law.
Sounds good. I'm just giggling at Find Your Shorts, and I'll leave it at that. My name is Charlie Belfontaine. I own Chicagoland Home Inspectors. Special thank you to Devin Tingle. He makes everything sound good. And thank you for listening. I hope you find it valuable sometimes. My name is Charlie, and I am out.